Today is day 4 of the June 94 10-day retreat in Springwater. Such clear sunshine after the clouds and mist of the morning. It's also amazing, isn't it? In one group discussion, sort of the main topic was, what is reality? Or do we first need to define what we even mean by the word before we can intelligently communicate with each other? Any word is free to be defined. It's not what we conventionally do. We use conventional definitions most of the time. But we're free to redefine as long as we all agree on the definition and know that this is how the word is used, which we really hadn't done with the word reality. So that what was mentioned is that actually everyone has their own different reality. Meaning, and now I'm defining it, we didn't quite thoroughly go into that. What does it mean? Each one has their own separate reality. We may already have a feel for it. I was raised differently from you, and you from him and her. Different experiences in content. Poverty or affluence. Different religious backgrounds, different race, social class, different education, different values, different inheritance. Different aspirations. And based on experiences, different contents of imagination. Imagination there is in all of us, but it is used differently for different paintings, to paint different goals in the mind, into what we want to be, what we want to have, what we are, and how or what is selected from the sheer infinity of stimuli, things that are going on in and around us. What is selected consciously and committed to memory? Looking with certain desires and fears and wantings and backgrounds at a landscape, it may appear different to each one of us. To one it may be a remembrance of a happy childhood, to someone else of an unhappy one. Someone may miss the flatness, the ocean, and dream of the ocean while looking at the hills. In the winter time, one may miss the sunshine and imagine we have sunshine, miss the heat, the warmth, imagine palm trees on an island. But even what is there is not completely perceived. It is selectively perceived and ignored. According to our state of mind, our mood. If we're very unhappy, distraught, anxious, depressed, we may see hardly anything around us. And what does appear may appear in colors, shades of grey. Whereas a happy mood, a moment of freedom from fear and desire may make appear, makes the trees appear green and crisp and beautiful, and a lot of detail noted in the leaves and bark that one never saw before. So is that what we mean, or what was meant by each one of us creating their own reality, which to a large part is our own dreams about what is, what was, what will and should be, rest of my life and after my life. Another life, a future life, or a paradise, a happy hunting ground. And these individual dreams and separate realities interwoven with each other, are they enterable by one by the other? Or do they remain largely separate unless we constantly give a running commentary to someone else about our separate reality, which someone else may after a while tire from or not even listen to very carefully? Again, listen selectively, depending on his or her mood. Not hear it at all, just hear a rambling and feigning interest. Hear a little bit, hear what one wants to hear, or hear what one gets annoyed at. May not have been meant this way. So, is it correct to say that in our separate realities we live separate lives? Not in touch with each other really. Only maybe as our story allows to let someone in according to that story. If we're entangled in it, if there's entanglement in it, identification with it, may not have the possibility of allowing someone in or wanting to enter someone else's. To enter someone else's so-called separate reality needs, to really enter, it needs a divestment of identification with one's own. Sort of being bare of garments, of layers, free of the capsule, to really enter and listen to what someone else says about themselves. And maybe to notice that it is a dream, it is imagery, projection, desire, fear, background conditioning, and all of that was mentioned. Separate realities are complicated. They're never simple. Complicated by all the thinking and wanting and dreaming that goes on in this mind so productively or creatively. Very complex, our separate realities. And I mentioned the complexity because a reality or truth common to all of us is not complicated. Not complicated through thought and imagination and background and wanting and anticipation and all the different fear structures and contents that shape individual reality. common reality or truth of this moment is utterly simple. Common, not private, not personal, in the sense of tinted and formed and shaped by the personal configuration of one's desires and experiences, fears. It is what is in all simplicity. Free from grasping or rejecting. Not product of the imagination and not producer of imaginations. When imagination comes in, or the desire to formulate what is experienced at a moment of freedom, that is thought again. Thought in picture. Trying to hold on in symbolic language what was there in all simplicity, unsymbolized, unformulated. And what is here now? It's not it was, it's here now. It is the foundation of all of us. As we become complicatedly, personally producing our own realities. It's the foundation, the pure being, the pure light, pure energy. It's so simple that thought cannot get a hold of it and overlooks it in its search for something imagined. That thought has imagined from reading books, and again in reading a book or hearing somebody talk. How rarely do we really read simply, unadornedly what's there or what's being said. So difficult, because the brain is so complex with all its existing categories of right and wrong, good and bad, all the opposites with which it perceives or hears. Already hears something that is being said as being good or bad. It has that sort of a search mechanism to fit what is perceived, heard, and seen into existing categories of thinking. And something without category, free from opposition, free from right, wrong, good or bad, escapes that searching brain or searching thought. Can't fathom it, because the stuff it's made of is categorizing and dividing into opposition, right and wrong, dark and light, good and bad, good and evil. So as we're living our daily lives and retreat to us daily life, albeit highly modified in absence of stimulation, absence of pressures to do, even to go shopping, to plan for a meal, all of this is marvelously taken care of by someone else. One brings one's worries into the retreat, but may notice after a few days that they do recede. Not so much due to repression or control, but by simply being more here, now, with the breathing, the sounds and sights, the leisurely pace, more time to eat, to taste, to swallow, to chew, to digest, to take walks, even though particularly in the beginning there may be a lot of tiredness in which not much is perceived, but being able to get the rest without guilt, without pressure or alarm clocks, and even the alarm that rings can be ignored. It's all right to ignore it. With all of this, our daily enclosures of fear and pressure and having to, needing to, must, I have to, they recede. They don't soak up the energies of the day, so that energy is, as it were, free-floating. It's there, and very often the thought comes up to people, what do I do with it? What should I do now? Give me something to do with it. But there's nothing to do with it, because pure energy is attention, is awareness, is nowness, is light. I don't mean light in the sense of fireworks. Lightness, illumination of thoughts occurring. Several people. I'm going so fast, I gotta stop. For each one to be able to take the time to look at it, not just to listen to what is being said, but to open up, looking at what is being said in oneself. Because then these words spoken really bear fruit, the fruit of seeing directly. Yes, this is so, or questioning it. And the question sort of sticking around, like Velcro in the mind. What is meant by this? Not letting go. So if a talk is held slowly, not with too fast a pace, one may discover things, which is the real essence of a talk. Looking into discovery, or kindling or maintaining a questioning. Several people told me since the talk yesterday that this connection between thinking and emotions, what we started out calling entanglement or involvement, became very clear during the talk and since. You see, it's a simple thing basically. It's a basic thing. How thought connects with emotion. Emotions flooding the body due to chemicals and neural electrical connections all over this intricate, fabulous body. And the aroused body, aroused in anxiety, let's say, it itself, the state itself signals to the brain, watch out, there's something dangerous around, something to be feared, something to be protected from or to hide from. That's what an anxiously feeling body signals to the brain, because the brain does keep on looking for stuff and never fails to find something that could be dangerous, which may not have been the original thought or signal that triggered the anxiety. That's gone. It was quick and fleeting. Very often is because people tell me, I don't know what started this anxiety. It's just there. Don't give me this thing of thought doing it. It comes by itself. Well, it probably doesn't come by itself. Why should there be anxiety arising without a trigger, which may not be a word or an intellectual thought, but it can be a non-verbal memory. Some sound, some sight acting as a conditioning stimulus or conditioned stimulus to get the body aroused. And then this aroused body seems to be proof to the brain that there is something to be afraid of. So it goes on thinking and figuring out and keeping the body going. And anxiety or anger or sadness. Very similar mechanisms. We can only single one out for clarity at a time. And fear seems to be the most prevalent of our undesirable, painful states. So coming back, rolling back to where we started from. This can become clear, or somewhat clear, glimpse-wise clarified in a talk, or later on one has given some attention to it, has raised the question, and that operates, that keeps the mind more alert and the body more awake. When there's interest in questioning, and how we do the things we do and why we feel the way we feel. And underneath it, a deep desire for change from that, deliverance from it, from the agonies of fear and depression and anger. So the truth of the whole triggering of emotional states is perceivable. This is how it's happening. When it's seen actually, experienced directly, not through explanation, believing the explanation, but an immediate coming upon thought, arousing body, and aroused body mobilizing more thoughts. That is not a separate reality. That is so for all human beings, the possibility for direct insight, direct seeing, direct perception. Not just the clarity of description, which a good text or a good lecture can provide. And it's tricky about the clarity of a good textbook, the clarity of description of a good talk, a good lecture, because the clarity of the words and how they make sense can masquerade for the directness of insight. And unless that insight takes place, one cannot help but take the clarity of description for the real thing. It's only when insight happens that one sees the difference between seeing immediately, which means without mediation, no mediation of words, direct coming upon, and the clarity of a description, which can be handled by the intellect alone. It needs not direct seeing to be clear to the intellect. And here I want to say something which I forgot to say the other day when we were talking about the difference between intellectual inquiry and meditative inquiry. It never hurts that the intellect understands clearly what is being said. So often this has been put down or maligned in spiritual practice. Oh, this is just the intellect understanding it. But it's very helpful for the intellect to be clear about something, even though there is no insight. Because something clearly understood may be much easier to be directly seen than something that is confused, murky, unclear. There seems to be some kind of a relationship between clarity of intellectual understanding and the possibility of directly seeing what all this clear description refers to in actuality. So as to the preferences that several people, when this question has come up privately or in groups, several people have voiced this preference. I would rather live in this than in that. I would rather be alive with all my individually, well, it's not formulated, we have formulated it freshly this morning, with my fears and pains and thoughts and emotions, than live in this sort of what seems it's an unfathomable state of voidness, absence of humanity. Oh, this is all speculation. When there's clarity and openness and some freedom from constant self-rumination, circling around oneself with all one's concerns and fears and the moods it creates, when there's some freedom from that, one is much more alive. One's body and relationship interactions. The intellect is more flexible and fluid to figure things out. It's not obstructed by the constant monkey wrenches and breaks of, wait a minute, this may be bad for me, or this is not what I'm identified with. I have never met anybody who lives in a void. We all are spaced out at times. Some of these words, for instance, like flip out and I think space out too, it's interesting to come upon them in foreign countries. They've taken that over. America, in this respect, is a leader. Ich bin gestresst, the German says. I'm stressed. Ich bin gestresst. Der Frust, the Swiss and Germans say frustration. Der Frust. Abbreviation. And to my amazement, I saw that this time in the newspaper, something was gekillt, killed. Das wurde gekillt. So that word too has been incorporated, not into French. In France now it becomes almost a felony, at least a misdemeanor. So, coming back, I've never met the person dwelling in the void. We all have our healthy egotism. I don't know how healthy it is, but it is very healthy in itself. Thinking of nice things, and One can feel the instant boost. You look forward to something, just one frame in the movie, one frame, and already the body has produced a boost, energy boost. And then sometimes people say, what's wrong with imagining things that make me feel good? There's nothing wrong with it. It happens. It's not willed or controlled, it happens. The brain is the scanner for good things or for dangerous things. But one can watch. Is this now becoming an addiction? One has to keep thinking of this in order to feel good. And then the spaciousness and freedom to be here, with everything, everyone gets lost with this milking of a pleasure-productive, pleasure-producing thought. All of that is seen, and in seeing there is intelligence. It doesn't have to be weighed. Is this good or bad? Should I continue with it? It doesn't work this way. Awareness has inbuilt intrinsic intelligence. To let go of something that is unintelligently confining, separating, alienating, even though the body feels a little bit better until it gets used to it. So this was the question about the different realities. Another one that comes up is about happiness and about change. Someone asking, are we here to change? Aren't we here because we want to change? And other people bringing up, I'm here because I want to be happy. Not many people quite dare to put it that bluntly. Because it goes against the image of a meditative inquirer. But there's also popping up in human beings times of honesty. Yes, that's really what I want. I want to be more happy. I'm already a little bit more happy than I used to be when I started all of this. But I have the feeling I can get to be happier than what I am now. So in that case, it sort of is related to the question of change. In that case, the desired change is from outright unhappiness with oneself and the world, depression about oneself and the state of the world all being one depression, to changing into a happy state. That's interesting. In Sweden, someone who had done a 3 weeks Vipassana retreat, a very educated man, had found great interest in reading some ancient Buddhist psychology. That book, I used to study it really fiercely myself. It's called the Abhidharma, in which the consciousness is amazingly, intensely, and, how shall I say, accurately explored. All the states of consciousness. I don't know how many hundred of them, listed, tabulated. And he said he found to his surprise that most meditative states, this of course is the psychology of meditation, meditative states, most of them are happy states. There are actually very few unhappy or unpleasant meditative states. And I had forgotten that, or else I would have brought it up sooner in a talk. But he brought it back to mind. And he says, I must be in one of those 90 happy states because I feel so good just in this meditation. So, happy states and unhappy states are not outside the realm of meditation and the recognition of it, the acknowledgement of it. So to do this sitting in order to feel happy, well, that's that person's ambition or goal, desire. And so far, as this person has told me, it has worked. It has been a change. So everybody can ask, we can all ask ourselves within our separate reality, what do I want to change from? Into what do I want to change? Of course, quite a number of people will say, I want to be enlightened. I don't know what all, I can't speculate on all of this. I want to be, I'm going on. Free, I want to be free. A change from enclosure, bondage to freedom. But not the void. I don't want to be that free. Just free enough to be happy. And all of these motives, desires for something different, something better, something freer, something opener, less fearful, keeps us going to retreats, to find quiet time. To what? To become aware of what's there, which includes the unfreedom, the unhappiness, the depression, the fear. Is that the change, to be aware? A change from mechanical oblivion, putting it very strongly, a lot of unconsciousness, unawareness of how we are, what triggers what, and what brings what about, and continues to bring things about, because effects become causes, which have effects become causes. It's endless. To become aware of that rather than being, as it were, the victim of these ongoing processes which we feel as imprisonment, depression, fear, anger. Is that the change, to begin to awaken to what's going on in a new way, which is not just clear thinking about it, which often studying psychology can provide, one degree or another, to be more clear about what causes bring about what effects, but to be the intimate witness of it, right now, of this thing happening, aware of it, beyond the description that one has read. Seeing what's going on may say, yeah, this is what I read, and it is really so. I can see it. It's true. And no one can take that from one. What has been directly experienced is uncorruptible. The books you read, somebody says, I've got a better book than this, so then you read that, and then you wonder whether you should abandon your book and take this book. But what is directly seen has an amazing and totally different strength of its own. I said it's incorruptible. Well, I'm looking at it. Because thought, if this disappears, the clarity of the moment, the freedom to look, which is truth, freedom to look clearly is truth in operation. When that is not there, and it has a way of disappearing, then thought says, did I really see something truthful, or did I deceive myself? And with that thought, the network is back in operation. depending on one's constitution and background, one may say, yeah, I probably did deceive myself. Nothing good ever comes out of me. Or one is subject to other people saying, you probably deceived yourself. So one has to be very leery of these thoughts arising, saying something or other ex post facto, because the thoughts are not the seers. They're only the commentators, like the press. Maligning or enhancing, picking. I hope no one is here from the press. Press also does some good things. So does thought, for that matter. Thought can run quite accurately if it's in touch with reality, which we seem to manage more in our scientific endeavors, technological endeavors, than in our psychological living. So, what about this happiness? Wanting happiness. And this brings one to a retreat center, to a week or 10 days of sitting quietly, working with a person, talking with each other. I wonder whether if you took a poll of human beings, whether there would be overwhelming agreement that all of us want happiness. What shape this happiness takes, that may be individual reality. Sometimes in seeing some TV footage of Serbian gunners on the hills around a Bosnian town, on the high spot, which already does something to the psyche. One is on the high spot. Down low are the victims, the helpless ones. And some pictures that I've seen of these soldiers smiling in a way and saying, we're not going to end this. There is a happiness in that position right now of being the victor, being the intimidator, the one who has the power and the control. There's happiness for some people. So I just used it as an example because it flashed into the mind. Happiness has infinite faces, doesn't it? Or does it? I'm happy when I have lots of sex or no sex, lots of food or the best diet, from diet to seek happiness of eating or feeling. So many possibilities. I'm happy when I'm engaged so I don't have to think. With some manual work. I'm happy when I don't have to work. Also changes for each one of us, doesn't it? Is it? Very ungraspable. But happiness we all want in one way or another. So just like with personal reality and impersonal reality, is there a happiness which is not personally tinted by personal background desires, situations? We were talking about that sometime this morning or last night. And what came up for me was that happiness is what brings understanding of oneself and each other. Because this is not just an idea. To have insight, to see, to be clear is a joyful, energetic state. which is not just personal and closed, it wants to communicate itself to everyone who wants to listen. Hopefully not to those who don't want to listen. Becomes the crusader. What is it called? Trying to convert people. Proselyte, yes. Proselytizer. I wonder whether that is universally true. One may not agree on this conceptually. And that is a change, isn't it, from ignorance about oneself and acting mechanically, darkly, unconsciously, and then constantly reaping the fruit of having hurt someone or oneself, destroyed a relationship, or whatever all we do or what happens in our ignorance. I don't say that pejoratively, judgmentally. Ignorance just means the absence of light, the absence of seeing, absence of awareness. So is this happiness of beginning to understand about oneself, to learn about oneself, the change, which brings a fresh influx of energy and joy and love for each other, because it's the absence of self-hatred. We will end here for today, and there will be no talks for the next 2 days.